Matt, you and I have had a chance to talk recently a lot about service desk and service delivery and service management. But I don't think we've talked about it from the user perspective and sort of letting that drive how you define your service management.
Yeah, we really haven't. That's an important point. Any conversation about enterprise service management should be rooted in the people, the employees. And everybody gets caught up in, it's the whole enterprise, it's got to scale and fit the whole organization. But if you start with the people, you're going to start in the right place.
Right, they're more likely to use it. They're less likely to open a help desk every time or pick up the phone or come by and say, hey, have you got a second? So why don't we do that? Why don't you walk us through what it's like and sort of tips and tricks on how to set up not only service management, but really define it in a way that users will really like?
Sure. So we really know from talking to our customers that every business is different. Every organization has different needs, they have different preferences. So you want to configure your service desk to work that way. So the key goal is to give employees what they need in an easy to find place.
So that's really driven by the end user and the employee.
Yeah, it is. And so one of the key parts is understanding that every organization is different. So you're going to pick and choose the parts that work for you. You know your employees and your culture, and you're going to pick the service portal. You're going to pick chat maybe, allow them to do walk-ups or call in. But that's the beauty of this thing. It's a platform that you can use the parts you need.
Right, so think about experimentation and beta groups and like really—
A/B testing.
Yeah, like instead of just that one sort of implementation to rule them all, like think about this starting with user requirements and like build yourself backwards.
Yep, make things easy to find.
Okay, that's great. Well, why don't you walk us through how to get started?
Sure. So we named this session One Service Desk to Rule Them All. It's a really important title. You really want to consolidate all of the business processes we're talking about into one platform and, like we said, give employees one place to go to get everything they need. So the key to figuring out how are we going to configure this is looking at it through the eyes of the employee. What's the vision for them and what's their experience?
All right. I guess step one is make it look familiar to them, right?
Yep, it is. And so this is what we want as service providers. Make it simple, make it familiar. You know, you use a lot of different business applications. This should be kind of a seamless experience for them as well. So what you see here is it's very similar to what we set up for the SolarWinds team here. All of our employees come to a very similar portal. They've got useful services, useful articles, all available right at their fingertips.
And so this is not like out of the box. You've basically used marketing approved, brand standard images so that it just feels familiar the first time you look at it, like this is the official place that you should be interacting with services.
Yeah, that's exactly what we did. We actually have spent more time talking about what we wanted and planning it out than setting this up.
Right, well, how many times does that happen on your corporate internet where you're trying to figure out, like, you are here, where is the center, and there isn't one?
There's
right? And it's because it just doesn't feel like something that is a continuation of what the sort of .com front end of the page is. So, so this is great. At first time I saw this, I'm like, oh, that's our actual logon. And then I realized, no, this is a custom skinned UI for this.
Yep, it is. So let me take you into the service request first. This is one of the most important things. And we talked about this in lab. The service request is nice because there's a lot of departments in here. So we talked about scalability first. Look over on the left side, there's all these different departments. There's application support. You've got some change management built in here even. The compliance team is in here, facilities team, all the way down to legal. You know how they are. They definitely want to set form.
So the first step is remember there are departments other than IT.
Yep, that's correct. So let's take a look at what the facilities team is doing here.
So these are all service catalog items that you developed in partnership with facilities.
Yep, it is.
Like sat down and talked to them and said, what are the things that drive you crazy?
Yep, it is. And light bulb replacement is a good example. This one is something that we've got on schedule. So maybe they have every 90 days, they want to go in through and check light bulbs. Fire extinguishers, I think that we have to do those once a year. And this one actually has to be done in 16 days, you can see. So let's click into it. Here they've got some key information. It's just templated. These are the steps for doing an inspection on your fire extinguisher. This is the information we need to capture on did they pass inspection, did they not? Maybe we need to take some follow-up action.
But this is also that kind of in-between area for service desk where it's not just the management, it's also education for the end user. I mean, this is somebody who maybe hasn't done this before. This is a governance issue to make sure that you're in compliance and you're walking through the steps to make sure that the work is going to be done right before the workflow is completed.
That's right, Patrick. It keeps it simple and it keeps it standard. So let's fill this thing out. This is in Covenant B. Number of damaged units, we only had 2, so that's not bad. We had 6 one time. And we did this check in Australia, and this is in the DevOps department. So all we do is request this item. The key for this is it skips the service desk, it goes straight to the facilities team. They're expecting it, they know what to do with it. It saves time getting to them faster.
And mostly it solves that problem of everything ends up as a uncategorized request in the help desk that then IT has to sort out fire extinguisher.
Yes, I live that problem every day, and I'm telling you, this is a time saver. Cool. So that's best case scenario. I think you picked up on that pretty quickly. Sometimes you're just going to get a ticket, right? So let me show you what that looks like. If I come to new ticket, so let's do the same fire extinguisher check that we did in the service catalog item. So you notice that there's two items there in the pop-up box, services and articles. That service, fire extinguisher monthly maintenance, is what we just filled out. So instead of opening the ticket, we're saying, go ahead and open this form that's already there. Like you said, standardized. It's got all the steps for somebody who may not know how to do it. We're going to push them in that direction. And then, of course, there's an article there, how to use a fire extinguisher, which hopefully they're not using in an emergency situation.
Exactly.
So the whole idea of AI here, and we'll get into this a little bit more, is to push them in the right direction, looking for those efficiencies, looking for that good employee service management, and making it scalable.
Right, especially with when you're delivering the service desk, to be able to say this is a form that someone almost never uses, they're not sure, and you're going to be able to steer people for that sort of long tail, unusual tasks onto the right form so they get service faster.
That's exactly right. Service faster and make it simple.
Okay, Matt, that is great in theory, but I think the place where we all fall down, whether it's with a help desk or a service desk, is that we have these great intentions, great ideas of what we're going to build, but then we kind of get lost in the complexity of the implementation of the workflow, especially if you want to include other departments.
Yeah, it's pretty common, and it's something that takes some planning. Anything that provides this much value to the organization needs to be well thought out, right? We find with our customers that a lot of times having all the extra planning and having maybe some meetings, getting your stakeholders together and gathering your requirements makes this part, building in the UI, so much simpler. So you want to track performance, you want to build data, and go from there. Start simple.
Okay, I'll believe it when I see it. Why don't you build a workflow from scratch and let's see.
Challenge accepted. The best example really is 2019 new hire requests. So this is the process we're using this year. Maybe we did something a little different last year. Next year it will improve. So let's click into this thing.
Oh, new hire requests and onboarding, always easy.
Always easy, sure. The reason it's a great example for this conversation is it always touches many teams. Of course, there's IT. They're going to do the basic, I need a laptop, I need a monitor, I need a mouse, and I need a bag. Those are the simple things. I need access to these applications. But there are so many other teams that are involved that we want to bring into this as well. So you've got your HR people, you've got your payroll people, you've got even your facilities people. The person needs a badge and maybe business cards, and all that's incorporated into this form. So let's walk through these. Let's fill it out. The new hire, let's hire you, Patrick. So we've got some fields here, and these are all, like we said, built through the UI. There's no coding for these, so you can manage these. That's maybe our titles have changed from last year, so that's why this is the 2019 request. Do you want to work in maybe marketing or finance?
Oh, let's do finance.
Okay, we can work in finance. So finance new hire, this is going to go to the accounting team, and let's start you today.
Awesome.
So one of the lists that we have here is for the person, maybe the hiring manager that's filling this out, they're going to know best what applications you need to work in finance. So let's add finance applications required, and another box pops up. So I don't think you need mainframe access to work in finance.
You'd be surprised.
You think? We'll at least give you NetSuite, and we'll probably give you DocuSign and a couple others. So just a simple multi-pick list, hardware required. It's going to give you a laptop, and we'll give you an extra monitor. A couple of other things. Since you work in finance, we're going to give you a money bag. And you're going to need business cards. We're going to need a way for you to get into the building. So you can see just by the questions that we're asking, these are going to touch multiple teams. And that's the part that's never seen here on the request form that's available on the portal. But I'll take you into the back end and show you where all that lies in the workflow that we're going to build.
Is there another piece here that happened as a part of the planning for this where you went and talked to the finance team about what to expect instead of that thing where we always have a tendency to just bombard some other department with this workflow thing with a tool that they're not familiar with and they don't know where to get started?
Yeah, there is. And a lot of conversations end with the IT person actually kind of learning more about how other teams run their business and just facilitating the conversation. Okay, so I'm the hiring manager here, and I'll just hit request.
Awesome, I'm all set, and I'm looking forward to receiving my money back.
Great.
This is great, and that was really easy to use, but you still didn't show me how you created that form.
I didn't. So it looks a lot like what we saw from the portal end user, what they requested on the form, but there's a little bit more built in. So here's your variables, and you'll recognize all those fields that we filled out. You can add to these, you can take some out, you can change them, and there's the whole workflow process that's going to run on the back end. So we have quite a few things built into this one. If I hit edit on this, I can show you some examples of what we might add, what we might take away, things to make it fit. So we talked about scalability, we talked about different businesses operated differently. This is how you make that fit. So the forms here are really easy to add. If I come down here, maybe we want to add somebody, look at all these things here. there's just little plus signs built in and conditions set. So if I come all the way to the bottom of all these things that we do to bring somebody on board, I can add maybe on decline, I can add things like tasks. The task could be maybe to let somebody know a certain thing wasn't approved or something was approved. But it's important to look at, let me click into this one, some of the options that you have. A task, maybe a person needs to go do something, shop that out to the different teams. Like we said, there's so many stakeholders. Maybe there's a group, a whole set of tasks that need to be shopped out and they can run concurrent. There's approvals that are built in, maybe different levels depending on who's being hired. There's condition sets. So if you're in finance, then you get a money bag. If you're working in IT, then you get extra access to maybe help the onboarding process continue.
And you know the one that I'm going to be all over, right?
Yep.
Process integration, right?
Process integration.
Because if you can start to do automation and integrate with other systems, that's where this really begins to pay benefits.
You can. That's really one of the most powerful things that exists here in the workflows. And I remember when we developed this, our CTO said, with great power comes great responsibility. You can do a lot of things with those.
Well, even the basics, like, hey, I need to get somebody in Active Directory. Instead of spinning off another ticket and kicking that off to IT to go create it, go ahead and just create that account from the first place with the groups that they're going to need.
You're right. And just because you're a nerd like I am, I'll show you that page. So here you've got different integrations with the applications that you have credentials for. You have different HTTP methods you can post, you can put, of course. There's your URL goes in and your body there. There's your payload for your XML or your JSON.
That's great. And you set the content type, so if you have an ornery system you're integrating with that's expecting something particular, you can actually set that.
You can. Very powerful. Right. Yeah, and the key to these, and you'll notice in this example, there's just a ton of things we've built in over time. The key is build it first. As you go to other stakeholders and you're asking them to use this as well, if you build them an example, it just works so much easier. They can envision it much more easily and then go from there. Start simple.
Right. So start small and improve over time.
Yep.
Okay, but to improve over time, there's some other tools that you're going to need.
I knew you were headed there.
So that's going to be things like what? Trends reporting,
heat mapping, Google Analytics.
Yep. That'll help.
We've got all of that.
Okay, but at the end of the day, if you really care about users, if you're really thinking about users, CSAT is the only thing that you really are using as a guide.
It's the number one metric.
Right.
Yep, and so if you see the top of the screen here, I've got the widget built into my own dashboard, and I'm looking at the last year's worth. We've actually got 100% CSAT. We've got a pretty low response rate. This is a demo account, of course, but 0% negative response. So the thing about CSATs is we like to keep it simple, yes or no. Are they satisfied? Did they get what they want? Could they go on about their way? So tie it back to the employee experience. They just want to get their work done. Did they? Yes, no. And if it's a no, you can easily follow up and figure out why.
So by keeping it simple, instead of rate us on 50 different axes and build a radar chart, it's just up-down. Right?
Yep, that's it. Quick report to go back. If you really want to dig into the data, it's all there, but it's also right here clean on the dashboard.
Yeah, and they're more likely to actually click on it because you're not asking them more questions after something was already broken.
Yep. So Patrick, CSAT is really the most important metric because you really want to understand the customer experience. And as you add other stakeholders, it's important to understand how you're servicing those employees in different forms that you're putting out there on the portal.
Right, so as complexity increases, you want to rely more on data and less on anecdote.
Yep, and it's the most important opinion, the employees.
Matt, thank you so much for walking us through this. I mean, we've talked about service delivery a lot in the past, but I really love the idea of always consider the impact that it's going to have on the employees who are using it, right? Really make it user-centric. And especially when you do things like what? First, make sure that you're creating a really positive experience to create, some service gravity that people will always come to. They'll want to seek out the service desk. The second one is make sure that you expand it across a lot of departments, right? So that you can get a lot of use outside of just IT.
Yep.
And then that last thing is CSAT everything, right? Constantly looking for where you can improve it because that's going to drive user adoption.
Yeah, it is. And if you can take some of these tips that we looked at today, it'll help you to start looking at things through the employee's experience. And like we said, that's where you want to be. So you want to ask yourself the questions of how to configure your service desk. And by keeping that in mind, you're going to be in the right spot.
If anyone needs a little bit of help, can they get that?
They sure can. So we've got tech support teams, we've got customer success, and they would love to have this exact same conversation with you about how to get your account set up.
Well, this has been great. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Patrick. It's always fun.